Oh, this
Hey,
is
Roxy.
5 pounds of love.
That's like 100 pounds of
Oh,
love
I
behind
bet.
me.
I can't. Is he a lab or a golden?
He's a golden.
You just
But we
had
give
him
him
cut down.
a high and tight haircut. Just so
Yep. Hi.
it's like he's
Hi.
listening.
What's his name?
Fargo.
Fargo?
Yeah.
Fargo, can you hear me?
I think he can hear you.
I don't know you.
He's totally watching the computer. That's so cute.
So it's great to see you. And
yes, I look forward to this chat. And I'm going to do a quick intro so you and I can get right to chatting, because the other night when we were chatting, we kind of got lost. And I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do for the podcast. So,
okay, great.
Hey, folks, my name is Jessica Mashkovich, and I'm the host of One Take with Jess. Today's guest is Joanne Nadell. She is an attorney for 30 years, a divorce attorney, I should say. She had been a divorce attorney for 30 years and has switched her practice or a while back to basically do divorces in a more humane way.
Good summary.
Mediation. So your career is now a mediator or a divorce attorney, if need be, to represent someone in mediation. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure you know that divorce inquiries have gone up in the United States by like 34% ever since pandemic hit. And in the UK, it's gone up 41%. I mean, marriages are certainly stressed financially or emotionally, or just confined in the same house as someone where you may not have been before, and then compounding that with homeschooling and working at home. I mean, it's just, it's so really fun, but
it is an unfortunate situation for my field. It's almost a perfect storm. And that saddens me because I don't take any, pleasure in that people need me, but I am grateful to help them and I do my best.
See, I knew you were a good person, like right from the get-go. I feel that you, exactly that. It's not that you take pleasure. It's just that you want to, it's like ripping off the Band-Aid. You kind of get to where it needs to go as painlessly and as quickly as possible. And I mean, I have so many questions from the get just about relationships and then, finally where you come in. But do relationships, like when someone comes to you, do you ever turn them away and be like, you know what, you're not ready for this. You really haven't worked hard enough at keeping your relationship together.
You're half right. You're half right. My experience has taught me to listen carefully to what the client is saying, whether it's a man or a woman, doesn't matter, the same rules apply. And I listen carefully to what they have to say. And sometimes they're not ready. They have more introspection to do. Maybe they need to talk to their spouse. Maybe they should either start or really stick with marital therapy if they're working on that together. And the advantage of that is that there's no rush. I used to get mad at my mom, may she rest in peace, but she would say, it's so easy for people to get divorced these days. Nobody works on their marriage. And that used to infuriate me because I would say to her, Mom, nobody goes through a divorce unless they have to. It's a very difficult, sometimes it's destructive financially, and it's painful. I was married 26 years and I had an awful divorce. And so I used to really feel that I empathized with my clients, but now I really get it. It's a bad process. It's hard.
Yeah. Do you think that you would, had your marriage stayed together and had it been, a good marriage, a flourishing marriage, do you think you would be as great of an attorney as you are now, or would you have switched into the mediation, or would you have been more of a ruthless attorney?
I was a
how
ruthless.
did your life experience end up helping or hurting your profession?
Absolutely. I was already very much into the collaborative divorce field, as well as mediation with alternate methods for getting divorced years before my own divorce. I think what I brought to my practice was just a little bit of a deeper empathy of how it really, you have this ball in your chest and it's not going to go away until it's resolved. And, I had a very good marriage for many, many, many years, but when it went bad, it went bad and it was time to get out. So, people come from all different angles. Some people, I just spoke to a lady who's been married, 3 years. I mean, there's all kinds of situations. And so the way that I help my clients is by guiding them from whatever point where they are. And what I try to do more, I think, than most lawyers is help that person, whether it's a man or a woman, get from here to here, so that they can start to look now at their future instead of being so stressed about destroying what was in the past.
Yeah. Well, I would think that if a marriage is starting to go south, and if people, what's the first step? Because sometimes it's so easy to look up divorce and then get all these resources at your fingertips. But if things are starting to go south and you're hoping it's a bump in the road, one person might be hoping it's a bump in the road. The other person might be thinking, I'm done. I've done this too many times and, we need to change. What are the steps that a marriage should take? And I know you're not a marriage counselor, you're more later down the road where you get involved, but what are the steps that you would recommend based upon, the couples that you've seen or the paths they've taken? How quick or not quick should people be to make that decision? Like, I'm getting a divorce and I'm bringing in the troops.
I don't bring in the troops. I bring in better, healthier, calmer tools. But the first thing, I'll tell you, and women and men who've been divorced will understand this. You're on the fence. For some people, it's months. For some people, it's years. Something's not right. And you give your heart to try and make it better because you don't want your marriage to fall apart. But then you wake up one day and you've just crossed the bridge. Sometimes there's a precipitating event. You find out, your spouse had an affair, or you find out that your spouse, stole all the retirement money and the college money and your family's destitute. Sometimes there's a triggering event like that. But more often, it's just a slow realization by one of you or both of you that you have to separate. So my business is composed of couples most of the time where both of them are on board, where they make a decision about whether or not to move forward. But there are plenty of cases, particularly, where the expression we use is, one horse is out of the barn and the other one's still thinking about what stall he's in.
Right.
He's in, it's very common in almost every family that one spouse has made that mental shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Once that happens, there's usually not going back.
Well, I know the whole process is very heart-wrenching. Once one of the people do pull the trigger and decide this is it, this is the direction we're moving. So is there any benefit to one person filing or seeking counsel first or filling out paperwork first over the other? Is there any Does anyone have the upper hand in the divorce, in the say-so of how things go? If I file for irreconcilable differences, or if my husband does it first, who has the upper hand?
In almost every case, it's irrelevant because, especially with my mediation clients, that's part of what we work out. Who's going to file, whether or not there's going to be an answer, which one's going to court.
Is there a difference between one filing versus the other at all?
No. Well, I'm not a litigator. I don't think that's necessary, but there are plenty, there are situations where one spouse has no choice but to file right away. Okay, if the payor spouse, typically the husband, decides that he's going to stop his direct deposit and not provide any living expense money for the wife and their 3 kids, you have to jump. You have to pull the trigger right then and there. It's not something you can wait for.
Right.
If there's any kind of abuse, that's not something you sit around and you wait for.
Right. You touched on a couple of things that I want to dive deeper into.
Sure.
When it comes to accounting, or when it comes to if you have the feeling that your marriage may end up in a divorce, there are certain people, whether it's the husband or the wife, who may start placing money elsewhere to protect it from a divorce situation, or they may start putting assets in someone else's name. Have you seen that? I mean, that's a silly question. I'm sure you have seen that. And as far as forensic accounting goes in a divorce situation, what's the look back on that?
Well, I would say, first of all, everybody in the family, both parties, needs to be educated right from the get-go, what they have. I mean, I'm stunned and sometimes it's not always the wife, sometimes the wife is the breadwinner and the husband has no idea how much life insurance is there, how much money is in your IRA, do you have a pension, how much money do they make, do they get a bonus? And I get a blank stare.
Yeah.
So anyone in whether it's a marriage or if it's a marriage, even in a relationship, if you are entwining your expenses, or if you're dependent on the other party for your support, you need to find out, ask.
Absolutely. And keep a record. You have to keep a little spiral notebook or a spreadsheet on your computer as to what the accounts are. And I know this because my husband and I basically have a quarterly meeting at the kitchen table.
That's wonderful.
Of all of our finances, when it comes to what does it cost to run our lives and our children's lives, and where are all of our assets, whether it's the kids' accounts, our accounts, investment accounts, passwords, balances, any debt, any other income, all of that stuff. We have a little quarterly at the kitchen table, just he and I. So
you are very smart. Very smart. And also you're a minority. Most people, especially if there's an imbalance of power between the parties, the one who doesn't have the power may not have the voice or the chutzpah that they need to have that happen. There are many, most of my clients, one person is in charge of the money, and that's the way it works. One person takes all the money. Now listen, sometimes, it's a husband who direct deposits his check, and then his wife's responsible for all the bills. Or it's where one makes a lot of money, one only makes a little money. So that little money is like stuff for the kids and for going out, maybe, dining out. But the majority of the funds go into a house fund to take care of things.
Right.
There's an unlimited number of options because we're people, and people live the way it works for them.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot can come out during conversations related to finances. Sometimes it's a very difficult conversation. Sometimes one spouse may feel like he or she is underperforming, so they don't want to have the conversation, whether someone who's managing the bills isn't doing a great job of it, or someone who's bringing in the money isn't doing a great job of it. They don't want to sit down at a table and, you know, be berated for it or embarrassed by it. But it is a very good practice to put in place. It also enhances, you know, or reinforces communication and support. You can both commiserate together if things are going badly, and maybe together try and figure out a way. So if the husband isn't making enough, maybe the wife is like, oh, I'm crafty, I can sell stuff on Etsy just to get us by, you know, or it could be like, it could turn into a creative teamwork discussion. So it's not all bad to come together on a quarterly basis to say, hey, how's our family going? It's almost like a business.
No, I think, well, I'll tell you, you know, the law that applies to dividing up marital assets is not unsimilar to, you know, a business or a partnership or something like that, because, you know, you garner everything that you have and you put a value on it, and then you decide, you know, what's going to go where in what proportion. So it's really the same, you know, process, no matter which particular business, you know, or industry you're looking at.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And if you want to parallel it to a business, you and your spouse are in charge of the business, which is the family unit, and you have these little employees that are like, and if
demanding things.
If the business goes under, you're really responsible for these little employees, with child labor laws, you know, withstanding. But I think that when it comes to relationships, and I don't want this to be a relationship conversation between a couple of gals, but when it comes to relationships, it's hard. It's definitely hard. There's, you know, if things aren't going right, there's the resentment layer, and, you know, I'll never, you know, feed him again or give him dinner or allow him in my bedroom. And I don't mean to speak those words as women, but I'm a woman, so I'm speaking those words. I don't know what men hold back, but it really hurts when running the business if the two partners can't get along. There really should be some onus to work and try and make the relationship work, and go back to the time when you first decided to form the union or form the business or form the marriage and make the children. You know, there's a lot of responsibility that needs to be, you need to take a lot of responsibility for all the previous decisions you've made and really try and give it your best to make it work.
Regrettably, though, you have to have the right partner who's on the same page as you. You also have to be forthcoming and, you know, honest and open about what your goals are and what's important to you, and sharing information. So I like your suggestion that, you know, you start your marriage with that.
Right.
And you do that, you know, over the years. You know, one of the things that is always a challenge is that, you know, the incomes are on a sliding scale. You may have a bang up year and everybody's thrilled, or you may not have such a good year. And so that immediately impacts your, you know, your families. I mean, I'm seeing it now with COVID. So many people have lost their jobs. Right. And it's hard to make decisions about your future and about support if you have, you know, if you're not working. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. And do you find that a lot of, I guess a lot of women who have either been out of the workforce for a while, raising the family, are reluctant to come to the table for a divorce due to the fact that they may walk away with nothing and have to care for the kids and have to still find a job, and you know, shared custody still means that you have to care for the kids and support yourself, and it's an awkward position that probably disproportionately the women are in.
Yeah.
When it comes to divorce.
over the years, I have represented many women who are in that exact position, who have, stayed at home, have raised their children. Now 20 years have gone by and they're expected to, just step up and start making money and taking care of everything else. It's very, very hard. I try, when I represent women in that situation, I refer them to a lot of resources that I have. I encourage them. I mean, aside from just guiding them through the legal process, I try to be a cheerleader in terms of you can do this, you really can do this. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when someone breaks down in your office and they are just terrified of what will become of them. Even people who've stayed at home, who have high incomes,
Mm-hmm.
they face the same fears.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not as desperate, but it's still someone has taken care of them.
Right.
Taken care of, provided for, and they're on this great plane, with their home and their kids and whatever else. And then the rug gets pulled out from under them. And it's scary, very scary.
It is scary. Is there, when someone files for divorce, or actually, can you describe what the difference is between filing for a legal separation and filing for divorce?
New Jersey does not have a legal separation. Okay, New York does. A lot of people hear it there. In New Jersey, you're married or you're not.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what is a legal separation then if you're in a different state like New York?
Well, I'm not admitted in New York, so I don't want to really give an opinion, but basically it's where the parties enter into an agreement and then live under the terms of that agreement for a period of time before the divorce is finalized.
Okay.
So really it's a waiting period.
Is it a mandatory waiting period in certain states?
I believe it is.
Prior to getting divorced?
Yeah, from the time you settle the case until you're actually divorced. But I haven't handled anything in New York. I don't really know.
Okay. Now, when it comes to divorce, people already envision dividing the house, moving out, selling the house, dividing the stuff, what's in my name, what's in his name. Again, I'm speaking from the perspective of a woman because I'm a woman. But is that always the case, or can people decide to live in the same home and still be divorced? Is it part of the requirements that when you get divorced, you can't live together anymore?
No, it's this is one of the things that makes my mediation work rewarding, because also in collaborative cases, the people get to decide what's best for them, what's best for their kids and their family. And they're free to structure a settlement that works for them. I mean, I've worked with people who have decided, even though maybe it's not to their best financial benefit, that they're going to hold on to the house for a few years until their kids are out of high school. And they make continuing sacrifices for their children, even though they're getting divorced.
Right. We talked about that and how, it's very unsettling for a kid to now have to go to mom's apartment or dad's apartment every alternate Wednesday and Thursdays in between. And we talked about the fact that it's more settling for the kids to be in their own home and then have the mom or dad be jockeying back and forth into.
Right. We talked about that at nesting.
Yeah, nesting or to their outside apartment, but the kids at least are still in their own bedroom. It's just who's here on Tuesday, mom. It's who's here on Friday, dad.
A lot of families, though, that's not common. I mean, it's available, but I wouldn't say it's common, because a lot of families don't have the financial resources to stay in have somebody in the marital home and then add renting an apartment on top of it.
Yeah.
So only people who can afford it can do that. It's one thing that I've experienced through my clients And I think you could find a lot of support for the fact that, it's not the divorce itself that is so troubling for the kids. It's how the parents handle it. High conflict parents put their children through high conflict. But clients who go through mediation or go through a collaborative divorce, they have the emotional ability to keep their kids first.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I wish everyone had the wherewithal to do that, but if a divorce is happening because of a cheating situation or a neglectful marriage situation, or, it's so hard for one parent to not say to the child, well, your dad was a rat, or, your mom is incompetent, or, I mean, it takes a big person and a person of character to definitely try and keep the kids as uninvolved as possible. And
Right.
how often do these things turn out amicable? How often? Or does it start out contentious, and does it sort of end with, hey, we did the best we could and I think it's a fair settlement, and everyone kind of parts ways?
You're talking about another world. I haven't worked in that litigious, contentious divorce world for 15 years.
That's so nice to hear.
Nice to hear. I did it by choice because it's not who I am. I always fought being a litigator. It just didn't sit right with me. So I've had the absolute, honor and pleasure of converting my business entirely to the alternate dispute methods of mediation and collaborative divorce. The people who come into my office aren't doing that.
So do they come in together? Does the husband and wife come in together, or do they come in with representation when they come in to talk to you?
When I'm doing a mediation, when I'm doing mediation, I work as the neutral. I'm the one in the middle. And by law, by this mediation statute in New Jersey, I don't give either one of them legal advice. I'm neutral. I listen to what they say, I listen to what they're asking for, and I help them build a consensus. All right. I always urge clients in mediation as a minimum to have an office conference with a family lawyer during the process, so that when they're negotiating for themselves, they have an idea of what their rights and also what their responsibilities are. So,
and if you see that one person is uneducated as to what their rights are, do you then advise them, or you advise them to?
No, I tell them,
go chat with.
Yeah, I kind of, I explain at the beginning that I'm neutral, that I don't give legal advice, which is hard. I've been a lawyer forever, but, I really zip and let them, because mediation is all about self-determination. So, but if I see one spouse or the other, and it could be either one, I don't get the impression that, oh, poor me, it's the women. It's very, very commonly the man who's gone to work every day, done his thing, and has no clue what is involved in running the home. But when I see somebody, I tell them up front, I said that, my job is to kind of cover parameters, because somebody with my experience and all others with, the same experience, we have what we call the realm of fairness, all right? So that every case, we know from experience and by the factors that are presented to us, kind of where the case should shake out. So if the clients are within those parameters, that's a comfort zone for me. But, here's an example.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, can you give an example?
Let's say
an outline even of what.
Well, let's say that the family, in New Jersey, the Alimony statute provides you have to be married 20 years to have open duration alimony. If you're not married 20 years, then you get what's called limited term alimony. And the maximum of the term is the number of years that you've been married. So if I have a couple and, you know, they've been married for 32 years and the husband's been the primary breadwinner and the wife doesn't have money, if she decides that she's going to waive support, which is clearly not within the realm of what's fair, I kind of do you really need to talk to a lawyer.
Sorry, my dog is whining. Hold on one second. Okay. So you'll say.
I'll say, you really need, I think before we meet again, you need to have an office conference. Okay. And I have a list of lawyers that I work with.
Is that the only thing that you tell her, or do you point?
No, I tell her, you need, you know, that doesn't sound right to me. You need to talk to somebody.
Okay. And then, so when someone comes into you and you start talking, do you have an outline in your head as to how to guide the conversation and what we're gonna talk about, and frame where that person is versus that person, and kind of, you know, start structuring? Because from what I read, hopefully mediation takes much shorter of a time frame and is more efficient than the whole process of litigation.
Yes, and it's a fraction of the cost too.
Yeah, how much does it cost on average? And if you can talk,
it depends on the family. You know, some people need 2 sessions, some people need 2 hours, some people need 10 hours. I mean, it depends on how complicated their financial circumstances are.
Yeah,
you know, if they're a little,
their assets as well, because I know a lot of divorce attorneys take a certain percentage, or charge a retainer based upon the.
No, we're not allowed to do that. No, it's an hourly fee.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is that just going back, I have a list of issues for every mediation case. You know, we start with the kids and we end with the pets, and it's just every issue that could come up. And that's my outline, and I give it to my clients. So when we finish something, we check it off, and then they can see what's left.
Okay.
And they see the progress that they're making.
Is that a proprietary thing that you developed, or is there like a slimmed down version that you might be able to share with my listeners who might be, contemplating this whole thing?
Oh, I can email it to you if you want.
Yeah, or if you can even speak to it at a high level. Sometimes people are listening to this in their car as a podcast, but these can just be trigger points or thoughts that they could start talking about.
It's double-sided. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but custody and parenting is the first thing that we talk about. If people have grown children, they're already 75% done.
Okay.
The majority of time is used to work out support and parenting time and custody issues.
Okay.
Because there are many, 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 many details. Next big issue is, of course, alimony.
Yeah.
Should there be any?
Back to that other thing. What percentage of your clients actually have small children, underage children?
Most.
80, 90%?
I would say 70%. The rest have college-age kids.
Okay.
Or older. Yeah.
Okay.
Alimony and child support, that can be a lot of work.
And that is state-driven?
Pardon me?
Is that state-driven?
Child support is governed by the child support guidelines, which were written by bureaucrats, I'll put it that way. And every family lawyer and every judge in the state uses the same program to come up with what is the child support. And you plug in alimony, how much they both make, how many kids they have, what are the ages of their children, how many overnights a week they spend with each parent, how much they spend on their health insurance, what are their parenting time expenses, do they get Social Security or any other government benefits, and it goes click, 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 and spits out a number. So there's not a whole lot of negotiation in the child support. Really, the negotiation part, if there is a financial concern, it's with alimony.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we talk about stories, I know a family who they got divorced and then their daughter needed braces, and it became one of those things, well, dad's not going to pay for it and I'm not going to pay for it. And, his health insurance doesn't have this part of dental. And it just became like a whole, a whole issue, again, like unnecessary suffering, collateral damage, of the children when it comes
That
to.
shouldn't have happened. That should have been decided when they got divorced.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Maybe it was his responsibility and he just didn't want to do it. So.
Or shared. Yeah. So, you have the option of, if there is some kind of glaring non-compliance, the final judgment of divorce is a court order that you can go back to court and have enforced.
Okay, so even mediation is a final judgment of divorce at the end?
Yes and no. Don't ask a lawyer an open-ended question like that. There's always more than one answer. When I do the mediation, I prepare 90% of the final contract they'll sign. But mediators don't write the final agreement, okay? The attorney who is taking the case to court and getting them divorced takes what I wrote and makes the final contract.
Without adding.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, but that's like, it has to be locked in a sealed document. Like no other person can put a spin on this because the whole thing is going to topple apart.
Well, so, that's why the property settlement agreement gets recorded with the court.
Okay.
So your contract, your final agreement does get recorded with the court at the time that you get divorced.
Okay.
So that there's a public record of your agreement.
Okay, but the lawyer that takes it in, then it becomes like the professional courier to the documentation that you've set and just kind of like stamps the official approval.
Something like that. It's just a little more complicated.
My own cartoon version of it.
But with COVID now, nobody's going to court.
Mm-hmm.
Cases are either being resolved by Zoom, or if the judge looks everything over and it's copacetic, they just stamp it and you're done.
Okay, so does that mean that your side of the things have a more direct route to the final seal of approval from a judge?
No, that would happen with any divorce, even a litigated divorce.
Okay.
Right now, because of COVID, the courts have changed how they handle business.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about custody and alimony. What's next on the outline?
Health and dental insurance for the children.
Okay.
Apportioning college.
Yes.
Right? Life insurance, taxes, who's going to pay for what and how. And then you've got your house, vacation home, mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks, pensions, bank accounts.
This is
the
where
list goes on and on.
Almost the kids thing sounds easy as to, the decision on, okay, who gets the kids and when, but the other stuff with the house and the assets, and people start really digging in deep with that, I would assume.
Well, a lot of it depends on, what their approach is. If people are looking for a dig or an advantage, they're probably not in my office.
Okay.
Speaking for myself,
okay.
Because I have a different client. And you hear about, these horrible cases where people are cutthroat about, every little thing, and they're arguing over their crock pot. Now it's an air fryer. That's that's what people are arguing about. Costs $40, but we're going to fight. Those kinds of things, add up. But honestly, it's if the family can do the children. When I say do the children, I mean work out their parenting, work out support, work out the other stuff. The rest of it falls into place. It really does.
Okay, so people are pretty fair. Does it usually end up being a 50-50 split?
Almost always, yeah.
Of all the
The
assets?
only, yeah, the only time that it's not, well, not the only, but the main reason why something wouldn't be divided equally is if there's some premarital value. For example, if you work for Bristol Meyer for 10 years and you contribute to your 401k and you're single and you sock money away because you don't have a lot of expenses, whatever that account was worth at the time of the marriage is off the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, premarital property is off the table.
So you would have to prove that by having some kind of statement of your account back before your marriage date?
Yes, and you'd be surprised. People can get it from the 80s, early 80s, sometimes even the 70s.
Okay,
So,
interesting. And what about a house that someone may have owned prior to getting married?
that's trickier. Because if you live there as husband and wife, then regardless of who owns it, they both have an interest in it.
Okay.
That's a very subjective question. Like, how much did both parties contribute? It's a marital asset because even though it's in just one name, then when it comes to a house, other things, the rules are different. But when it comes to a house, if you live in that house as a married couple, most often it belongs to both of you. Now, if it was premarital for years before the wedding, that's a different story because then that house had value. So we get the house appraised from, say, 1980, and we get the house appraised now. And the difference between the two, provides at least a guideline for the division. But that's complicated. There's a lot of different factors that go into that, which will bore you, and I don't want to go into.
No, you know what? It's actually really interesting because I find all these little nuances very interesting.
Nuances is the right word, yes.
When it comes to people getting married, you can go through a drive-through and have Elvis marry you.
That's what I'm going to do next time.
But when it comes to a divorce, it's extremely complex. It could be extremely expensive, and the things that you thought you knew, you don't exactly know. So all these little things really help people. Anyone that might be listening, it can really help them think about the fact of, well, is this business worth saving? And I'm relating a marriage to a business again, because it's more complex to disassemble it than it is to work on it and maybe keep it together. But
yeah, it's complex in the heart.
Yes.
As well as the money. Yeah.
Yes, as well as the money. So student debt, how does that get divided? Like say a doctor goes.
The children or the, okay.
No. Actually, I was thinking the husband or wife goes to medical school, racks up a ton of student debt for schooling. Who's responsible for paying for it? And do the assets from the household go towards paying that?
Unless, again, I have to, preface it with every case is different. It depends on where the money came from, how much money they're making. I would say 9 times out of 10, the person who has the loans pays the loans. All right. But if they've been married for a really long time and the other spouse has been getting the benefit of that medical degree, right? You follow me? Then that might change it.
Okay. And benefit could be standard of living.
Yeah. Standard of living, prestige, whatever else goes with it. But again, there are so many little pieces you have to analyze. So I can't give you a firm answer because like I said, every family is different, every case is different. And what's important to each client is different.
Right.
Sometimes people don't agree on how money should be spent or how money should be, allocated to take care of something.
Yes, true. Okay, so what's next on the outline?
Well, you identify everything that you have, all your assets, and you figure out how much they're worth, and you work out a plan for dividing them. Then the harder part is you take a look at, you identify, put a value on, and then you have to divide up your debt. That's not fun.
Of
So
course.
there are a lot of marital home, mortgage, credit cards, personal lines of credit, automobiles, motorcycles, boats, loans to family members. That's always a loaded conversation.
Yeah. So where do those net out? I mean, I could imagine every single one of them is like, well, I don't have the shopping problem. You do. You know, the credit card debt is yours. And well, I didn't buy the boat. You did.
Well, there's different ways. There are, different approaches. And, there are rules based on case law of how that should go down, but each family has the right to do it individually. So if a couple is in mediation or in the collaborative divorce setting, they can pick and choose on their own how they feel that should be divided. But the case law has talks about, well, who owes what. Here's something that happens a lot. You mentioned like a shopaholic. So sometimes there's really high credit card bills, and it depends on what it was spent on. So, if it was spent on a vacation to Tahiti with your lover and not your spouse, that's your bill. If it was spent on, redoing the kitchen in your new house, that's your bill. If it was to buy jewelry for your girlfriend or Victoria's Secret, that's your bill.
Right. Okay.
And I have had cases, not mediation cases, but when I litigated, where we actually hired someone to go through all the bills and apportion whose was what. Now, to me, that costs so much money, but they were serious. They wanted that done.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. I mean, some people are so intent on making the other person
Scornable.
liable and responsible that they will take so much money out of all of the money that they may get in terms of assets or settlement, and they will pour it into the lawyers.
Yeah. I mean, most of
Either
the
to
time,
make sure one person doesn't get any at the end. I mean, there's so
right.
many.
So like if there's like you mentioned a boat before, if there's a boat and the boat has a loan, the loan goes with the boat. If I have a nice car and it has a loan, the loan comes with my car.
Right.
Those kinds of things aren't complicated.
Yeah.
The arguments come in when you talk about, personal lines of credit or credit cards, because, it's not always something nefarious. I mean, a lot of families, when they hit, hard times, or quite frankly, if they're living above their means, what they do is they use their credit cards literally to survive.
Right.
So they may have credit card debt that far exceeds what you think they should based on their income. And that's very, very, that's just an unfortunate and very common situation. So when the money's been spent on supporting the family, it's a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah.
And I find my clients don't argue too much about that. If that has always been the plan and the way that they lived, they just acknowledge that that's what it is and that they're equally responsible. It's when there's something covert that there's a problem.
I could see that happening. I could see that being a problem.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
what
other
about burial plots?
Excuse me?
What about burial plots?
Well, burial plots are deeded to the individuals, so they can each take one.
Okay. So you can decide to sell it on your own, and
well, actually, burial plots don't appreciate. They, it's what you paid for it, so you can divide it up. I mean, honestly, I haven't had that situation where they had to decide like who was going to get the plots. So,
Trust me, it'll come about. And then
oh, it's only a matter of time. I know
yeah.
that.
Dying is very expensive. Very expensive. My father-in-law passed 5 years ago, may he rest in peace, and we got a twofer. One for him and one for my mother-in-law, who's very much still alive, but to reserve her spot and get
Right.
in at a price 5 years ago, where now the price is much higher. So it's sort of an investment. There's hedging going on. I don't know, but it is a whole market unto itself.
True. True.
So what's next on the list, and how much does mediation cost?
Well, the last thing on the list is reminding people to do a new will.
Yeah.
After your divorce, you have to do a new will. And then the last thing on the list is payment of mediation and counsel fees. So we never want to leave all of that out of the discussion, frankly. But
whose debt does that become? Whose credit card? How do they share that debt? No, I'm serious. Like, does the person who filed end up paying for the mediation, or?
Well, again, in my work with mediation and collaborative divorce, nobody files.
Okay, so but who puts the bill?
We settle the case first and then file, so that you don't have to do all the crap the court requires. That's a professional word, sorry. All of the steps that the court requires in order to finish your case.
Do they put 2 credit cards down on the table when they're done with mediation?
Yes, it works 2 ways. If the parties are separated already and they're living on their own and they've kind of separated their money, they've been separated for a while, they each will pay half of the fee.
Okay.
When I do mediation, I don't take a retainer. It's just paid at the end of each session. So, and that's how most mediators do it. They don't take a chunk of money up front. It's just kind of pay as you go. And the advantage to that is, no, you don't have to lay out a lot of money. And if you don't have, money for an hour or 2 hours, you just wait until you can.
Okay. And what is the average cost of a 3-session mediation? Not necessarily with you, but just on average, because you know how I mentioned that getting divorced is very expensive. That wasn't more about splitting the assets. It was more about the cost of getting divorced, whether it's paying attorneys, paying mediator, paying fees, filing fees.
So let me give you an example. If you have a bad case and you have one of those emergency reasons that we talked about earlier, that you have to get divorced, in Monmouth County, you could pay a retainer to a lawyer anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the complexity of your case, the size of the firm, the lawyer's experience, all different kinds of factors.
Okay, and this is just one lawyer, one side.
Right.
One
And
lawyer.
the other side has
another side who has to pay that same amount. Okay.
Correct. Mediation is paid by the hour. So the rates in Monmouth County are between $325 and $450, depending on, again, experience and reputation and whatnot. So you pay that as you go. Most of my cases are done in 3 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an hour and a half or 2 hours. So for $2,500 or, some variable of that, you've resolved all the issues. You've got a plan of action. You know what you need to do to finish the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, if they're not going to do the divorce on their own, which some people choose to do, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Generally the fee is between $1,500 and $2,500. I'm talking about Monmouth County. I'm talking about this area. Up north, it's more, south, it may be a little less, but for this area, then that would be paid on top of it. So for less than what you've paid for a retainer for one lawyer, you can be finished.
That's great. That's great. And people do have to do a lot of the homework up front. They have to do a lot of those sitting at the table, like I have my quarterly with my husband, and they have to come to your table with all of these assets already pre-identified, and then,
Right. I have, a pretty cohesive system in terms of what they need to bring. But I'll tell you, it's not uncommon. The husband brings his stuff and the wife brings her stuff.
yeah.
And I also will tell you that most of my clients tell me that they haven't talked to each other since they were in my office the last time.
Really?
It's not uncommon because it's reached a point once you cross that line that you're getting divorced. One, it's painful, and two, it's scary. Like, you don't know how the other person's going to react. And divorce lawyers have a saying that the divorce goes like the marriage. So if you had a marriage where people screamed and yelled and, were very verbal and aggressive with one another, that's the kind of divorce they're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
If you have two people who avoid, I'm not going to deal with it, I'm not going to discuss it, I'll just hang in, and this is the way life is, then, there's much less drama.
Well, I mean, you are a calming person. I even feel very calm just chatting with you. So
Oh, I'm glad. Good,
any
thank you.
hysteria or anything, I would assume that you have a way of diffusing the room and bringing a sense of calm to your clients. So I like what
Yes,
you're doing.
I've acquired a good skills, and I one of my other things that I do is I'm putting together a program now. I call it the peacemaking process, where I'm putting together a course to teach people methods that I've used to become calm and to be able to stay, grounded and manage, just to help people learn how to deal with conflict.
I like that. I love that, actually.
Thank you.
Is
I'll
there
tell you more about it when it's done.
Okay, okay. That's great. Have you ever basically asked a couple to leave and say, you know what, I'm not for you.
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah,
you may actually need, my lawyer friend so and so for you guys to hash
yeah,
this out.
yeah. I've had a couple unpleasant scenes like that. Um, I've had one spouse or the other leap out of the chair, scream horrible swear words at their spouse, turn to me and say, "I'm sorry, this isn't going to work," and they leave.
Yeah.
And the other one bursts into tears, and then I have to get them, like, sorry. I have a list of attorneys that on my referral list, other lawyers that I trust people to work with. Yeah, I don't get a VIG, I don't get a commission, I don't get jack. But these are people that I've worked with for many years who I trust. And I give that list to both spouses
Okay.
so that even if they're going to have a tough divorce, they have an attorney who's trained not to let it get off the rails.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah, I've had that happen maybe 5 or 6 times.
So I want to go backwards. And you used to be a divorce attorney. Now you're very focused on the calmer mediation side of things, and it is a better way to go. So if anyone out there is looking to throw the towel in, mediation sounds like the best way to go, and open communication and calmness and
Right. Now, the one thing that may make mediation not work is if you have someone or both parties who are really unable to speak for themselves. They're unable to verbalize, in that setting, like it's just too hard for them to do that. Or if people are contentious, now I can deal with the usual, like, oh, shut up kind of contention.
Mhm.
But if there's really a, issue between the couple, that's what collaborative divorce is for. Because in collaborative divorce, each person has their own attorney, and we work as a team to settle the case. It's very transparent.
Are you still involved?
absolutely.
Okay, so now they have representation.
Correct. I represent the party, but instead of getting into, another crazed divorce setting, which I won't do, in collaborative divorce, there's a lot of information about it on my website, AtlanticDivorceMediation.com. Talks a lot about it. And the collaborative work, we have a divorce coach. We have a mental health professional who moderates the meetings so that if the heat's going up, you have a professional kind of help bring it down. If one of the spouses is getting particularly agitated, the divorce coach can take them out of the room. The parenting coach will work on the parenting plan so that if it's hard for the people to talk about it, you have a mental health professional who's trained and who's also trained in the developmental stages of children to make sure that they get the best possible agreement.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of people in the room now. Is that two representatives, one for each?
Two lawyers, yep, and the divorce coach.
And you. So that's probably
no, not me.
Oh, you're no longer
mediation's part A and the collaborative stuff is part B.
Got it.
When I do a collaborative case, I have one client who I represent.
Okay, got it. So you put your attorney hat on and you can advise at that point?
Right. But the whole purpose of the collaborative work is you actually sign a contract that you're going to work it out. You're not going to court. And by doing that, that psychologically, that when things start to get tight or tough or people are starting to lose it, you can remind them look, we made a commitment. So if we need to take a break, let's take a break. We'll come back next week.
Right. And is the fee structure still by the hour? Does everyone get paid by the hour in that room? Or
yes, they get paid by the hour, but the collaborative work is more expensive because you have more hands-on time. Meaning, you have more time committed just with your lawyer.
Okay.
It's by definition, it's a little more expensive for the family. Sometimes a lot more expensive, depending on how difficult things are, because now you have two lawyers.
Okay. So once you involve the lawyers, the price tag goes up tremendously.
Oh, well, definitely goes up.
Okay. And then the other stage, if things still can't get worked out, or if people choose to go to the other direct route of going straight to the lawyers and paying retainers, it's once you start paying retainers, you start getting into a lot heavier arguments or heavier negotiations or heavier price tags of legal fees. Why would someone not choose collaborative over going to a lawyer's office and starting to pay a giant retainer?
They may not know about it. It's only been around since 2005. I was one of the, people in the beginning who's been building a practice and bringing it to New Jersey. They may, they don't know, right? I mean, most people, they see what they see on television. Well, if we have to get a divorce, well, damn, I need a lawyer, and they get a lawyer,
right?
And they spend a fortune. And the reality is it can be done for so much less money and with so much less damage, to yourself and to your health.
Yeah, I wish more people knew about that.
The mediation has become mainstream, and it took a long time. We're hoping that the collaborative work will not take as long.
Okay. Yeah, it's a slightly different business model that sounds like it makes divorces a little bit more affordable and a little bit more controlled.
Yes, and it's for people who, if one or both of the parties do not feel comfortable sitting in a room with their spouse, or now we're doing it on Zoom. I'm in the process of converting my whole practice to online.
Wow, so this has worked out well for you in terms of convenience, or people feel more comfortable?
Yeah, no, since COVID, all my work has been online. I've met with a few older clients who insisted on sitting in the office. We all have our masks on, and I'm disinfecting constantly. But the online mediation, my clients took to it like fish to water. I mean, they don't have to get dressed up. They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to get childcare. They don't have to take time off from work because half the people are working from home anyway.
Yeah.
So we have
Are you able to have
lunchtime mediation.
Are you able to have a good conversation where people aren't over talking each other or feeling?
Absolutely, just like you and I are now.
Yeah.
But there's three of us.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with the tone that I set. You know, I want people to feel comfortable. I want them to feel safe. I want them to ask questions. So, you know, mediators are a different breed. You know, our goal is to resolve your case and do no harm.
Right.
You know, not all the high-powered litigators have a similar.
Yeah.
You know, it's just they're trained for something different. And the you know, the reality is that there are cases that have to be terrible because somebody's done something terrible. You know, if your husband takes your kids and flees the country, mediation is not going to resolve that problem.
Actually, that's a good point. That is a great point. So what are the types of scenarios where you could already say mediation's not for you? So you just gave a very good example.
Okay, another
Something
example.
highly illegal and you need to.
Right. Or you find out that your spouse is involved in some really bad criminal activity. Or you find, and you need to protect yourself. Another thing that I've seen not infrequently is where there's been a cash business and there's been lots of shenanigans in terms of filing taxes. And the other spouse is completely in the dark. The IRS has what's called an innocent spouse rule, but you can't do that in mediation. You need your own lawyer who's going to be protecting you.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that would be so. But you know, and there's also, I'm sorry to say it, but there just are couples who want to beat the shit out of each other. Excuse my French. It sounds terrible, but I mean, those people, there are people like that. You know, they don't have the composure or the respect or the patience.
And they're not candidates for a collaborative divorce either. No, they just really have to go and knock each other in court.
Yeah. Pardon my French. You can edit that.
No, there's only one take with Jess. There's only one take. No editing. And I like the fact that you're real. What are the benefits of people being divorced, whether it's divorced on paper? Are there any tax benefits besides for, you know, the, I don't know, ability to either offload yourself of a bad spouse or something like that? But are there tax benefits? Because there was a whole little trend of people getting divorced on paper for applying for college applications or in the future Medicare or tax purposes, filing taxes.
Well, once you're divorced, if you don't remarry, you know, you have to file as a single person. And the feds really have a penalty against single people. You know, you pay much more money. There is a tax benefit to being married so that you can file a joint return.
Okay, so that's the opposite of what I was thinking.
But that's what I'm pointing out, is that if once you're divorced, you lose that ability to file jointly.
I see.
It's interesting because the IRS determines your marital status on December 31st. So cases that we settle, people in my industry who are settling now, 99% of them, they don't get divorced until January.
Oh.
They can file all the papers and get everything ready, but they don't finalize their divorce until after the first of the year. Okay. So they can file one more joint tax return together.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because that saves them money.
Yeah. And if people do get divorced and they're getting divorced for fraudulent types of reasons, whether boy, I can't even make it up anymore because I thought I made up a couple of unethical types of reasons before. But are there any penalties to getting divorced when you shouldn't have gotten divorced? Whether to skip out on paying a certain bill or skip out on.
Well, I'll tell you, I have not done this myself, but I have heard of two instances. One, I have heard of seniors getting divorced so that a spouse who's very, very ill can get the necessary government assistance for their care.
Okay.
So
I
that,
think that was the one I was referring to
yeah,
before.
where, you know, you you divide everything up and disincentive, you know, you deliberately take money from the sick spouse so that either they'll qualify for Medicaid, or if it's income driven, they'll have less money to pay for the institution. I don't know anybody who's done that. I've never been a facilitator for something like that, but I have heard people talk about it.
Okay. I too have heard people talk about that too. And I wanted to know if there were any repercussions, any illegal side of, well, you really didn't get divorced, you're still living together and we're going to sue you or something. I don't know. I'm making that up now.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have any opinion about that. But you know, Medicaid has a 5-year look back, so that, you know, you can't just say, look, let's get divorced this week and I'll take all the money and then you can get government assistance. You have to plan along, you know, it takes time because they look back 5 years.
Right. Right.
So, you know, it's not uncommon for people to put their house in their kids' names as part of their planning, but that's not my bailiwick. I'm not an expert in that.
Do you remember the movie The War of the Roses?
I have The War of the Roses upstairs.
I recall them not wanting to give up the house, and they literally divided the house in half. And
they died. Remember, they were on the chandelier.
Well, way to ruin the ending. Yeah. I saw the ending, but anyone else?
Oh, sorry, didn't get that. Oh well. But the point is that they were classic. They were both sick.
Yes, and they were
they were sick, psycho sick. So I don't know. I can't imagine. I've never been involved in a case that bad.
Okay, I'm sure there are cases that exist like that. But I guess my question is, what if one spouse is refusing to vacate the house and basically, you know, saying this is our house and I'm not leaving, you leave, and the other person's like, I'm not leaving, you leave.
That's very common.
What happens if it's so common?
Well, they live together until most people who get divorced sell their home. They have to, because there isn't enough money to just have two residences. And this is one of the biggest challenges that I have, is when people, you know, many people get by in their home with the money that they're making and they're getting by. When you take one house and now you've got two mortgages, 2 utilities, 2 property taxes, 2 everything, that really hurts.
Yes. And the goal is to sell the home and to, you know, go off in your separate ways and have a proper domicile that's, you know, appropriate to what living
can afford
in your means. Yeah. But what happens when one person does not want to vacate the house and the other person does not want to vacate the house? They basically say, you should move and I'm not selling the house, you know, and
that's not uncommon.
If it's not a financial necessity to sell the house.
No, the court,
How does that usually get resolved? Is there one
a
person,
judge.
a judge? Because I was going to say, it by law, is there one person that has more of a grounded case for
No.
staying in the house over another? No.
The only possible reason why that would happen was if it was the mother and you had young children, or maybe a special needs child, or there was some, external health reason why that might be necessary. But in the long run, that doesn't happen in my cases, really, because the understanding is that what's going to be best for the kids. And usually what's best for the kids is that both parents have a decent home so that the children can go back and forth and be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
In a case like that, like the War of the Roses, obviously that was Hollywood, so it was over the top. But even without that, people who are very contentious, eventually they would have to go to court and make an application to the judge to compel the sale of the home. But it could take months. It could take months before it's resolved.
What's the longest divorce you've seen drawn out in the courts?
I heard of one recently that was 6 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
And what's the shortest duration of mediation that you've seen? 2 people.
I had clients. They brought all their paperwork to the first meeting, and in an hour, they had made all their decisions. And I'm not going to take credit for that because that's exceptional.
Right.
But it's possible. I also finished one recently. They only needed 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Their case was very straightforward. They had adult children, so they didn't have to do any of the business, any of the parenting time. They make exactly the same amount of money, so there wasn't any alimony.
Mm-hmm.
They agreed to sell their house and split it 50-50, and everything else fell into place. It was very, there weren't any complicating factors.
That's good. That's efficient. Are there times where you've worked out the mediation and then afterwards you're like, that's a shame? They could have worked it out, or I wish they would have worked it out, or they're both good people and, maybe someone, and you kind of think in your head, which one, maybe they could have tried a little harder.
That's a romantic notion. I've been doing
Well, we have romantic notions for love and getting together and the romance side of it. There's got to be, it can't just all be doom and gloom when they're.
No, but like I said, like I told that story about, my mom. I've never been with a couple that I couldn't read or have a sense. And again, this is based on intuition and experience. There's a reason why they're getting divorced. They don't always tell me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ask them. Well, what brings you here?
Really?
Not relevant.
Okay.
If they want to tell me, they tell me. And not everybody, sometimes it comes out like, oh, so-and-so had an affair, or, there's a problem. But in a lot of mediations, why they're getting divorced isn't relevant.
Huh.
Yeah. So, but the answer to your question is, I've never said to myself, oh, they're such nice people, I wish they worked it out.
Yeah.
Because I don't.
Not even for the sake of the children?
If they're in my office, there's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think this definitely goes back to just the whole seriousness of marriage and not entering into it, without knowing the person you're with. There's a little benchmark that you should have 2 years with a person before you even commit to getting married, so you can see them through all the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, and then do it all over again. And maybe there'll be a wedding in between or a family issue in between. And you could really assess how they handle the good times and the bad times because once you enter into marriage, it is binding. You do create a family, you generate shared assets, and then tearing them apart is, or, dividing them is a complex situation, as you've tried to make it easier and palatable, but it still is a very emotional and complex situation.
It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's painful, but there are external factors sometimes that bring families to me.
Right. Do you ever, I know you said that sometimes they don't even tell you the reason why they're there or the reason why they are, pursuing divorce. Do you ever get people that come in there and almost use you basically as a counselor?
Oh, no.
And tell you all too much information?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I have all my diplomas on the wall.
Okay.
And when they start going down that road, I go, time out. I'm a lawyer.
Okay.
I'm a therapist.
Right.
I would be happy to give you the name of a therapist. In fact, in my office, I have a wide selection of business cards from relationships I've built over the years of therapists and accountants and realtors and insurance people and all kinds of stuff. So that I'll say, I like this person. And again, I go, I don't get a vig, I don't get lunch, I don't even get a cup of coffee.
Right.
I trust this person. This is
Okay.
somebody I trust.
So they're not ready to sit at that table with you then. If they start pouring their heart out, they're not at that place yet.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
So when you were back at the law firm forever ago and the men started getting all the divorce cases coming in, how did you end up with all of them in your lap?
Well, let's put it in context. It was 1984. I was the only woman in a law firm for miles and miles. So they just decided that, like, this is crummy work. Let her do it.
Why weren't divorces as lucrative as they are today?
They may have been, but
They just didn't like the emotional side of it?
no. Nobody wants to be a divorce lawyer. Even the ones who are divorce lawyers who are making a lot of money off of people's, problems. It's a very hard, very, very hard job.
Emotionally or
Yes.
physically? Because the family unit? Okay. So they decided to toss it all over to you. And you did it for a long time.
Very long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it just kind of worked out that way. They were happy about it. And I had a gift for it. So I think that, things happen for a reason.
Well, I think you do have a gift for what you're doing now. And as a mediator, like I said, you're very calming, you're very thoughtful. You're very holistic when you're approaching the whole scenario. And I hope that people do find value in mediation. And if not, then I'm looking down to make sure I use the right word, collaborative divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure if anyone has any questions, they could probably contact you or take a look at the website.
Sure. Yeah, Joanne Nadell. Easy to find.
Okay, great. And would you be so kind to share that outline, or if that's not appropriate, that's fine as well.
No, I don't mind.
Okay, because I think that would be helpful for people that may want to access it.
Okay.
This is a hard time. This is a very challenging, this whole COVID pandemic. And, like we started out in the beginning, people spending more time with their spouses and getting to know them for the first time again, and maybe not liking what they see. And
I remember, I think this is accurate, but don't quote me. And in China, the divorce rate shot through the roof. And then England, they have statistics. So,
yeah, 41% increase.
That doesn't give me any joy, because it means a lot of people are going to have pain. But I think that I make it bearable.
Yes. Yes, with hopefully as little collateral damage, because it's the kids that end up suffering. So I hope that parents understand, this is serious stuff.
Mhm.
And
Again, no one goes through this lightly.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? It could take a little re-engineering of how we interact with our spouses. If they used to work and they used to be a workaholic, and all of a sudden they're home now 24/7, uh, you have to kind of, I don't know, retread the tire and
Well,
think
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
about think about how you want to, share this new love with your love that you married a long time ago, because they are around more often. So just because
Right.
we've developed a very, small threshold of patience, with all these people around and they're messing up my stuff, and he used to be gone or she used to be gone most of the day. You have to start readjusting and pivoting. People like to use that
Right.
word.
Right.
Pivot in your relationship and see how you can make it work and change it up.
Right. And
Not,
I think that um, one of the things that people have said, and I know my therapist friends have said, you know, when you're in the thick of this COVID, what we're all going through, is not the time to make life-changing decisions,
exactly.
because you are, whether you'll admit it or not, you're out of your mind. I
Yeah.
think we're all out of our minds. It's exhausting, and it's frightening, and it's stressful. And then you tack on the election, and then you tack on the social unrest. I mean, we find ourselves in unprecedented times. And I would hope that most families would try to cling to each other, and ride it out. And now may not be the right time to make those decisions. Some people have to. Some people have to. I've also had people say, done, let's make an appointment. So it depends,
Yeah.
but I would hope that people, I'm telling you, when it's time, when you've reached the point of no return, you wake up and it's as clear as a bell.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I'm
that's
going to
just,
leave you on those words, and I just hope that this has brought value to the people that are listening.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you. Greatly
Have a
appreciate
nice evening.
you too. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.